Hi, this is the second video accompanying the adding association step in the Joomla tutorial developing an MVC component. And in this step, we're going to be looking at the second aspect here, COM associations, hello world edit, and propagating associations. Now we're going to start with COM associations. And that really refers to this multilingual associations. Whenever you do components and multilingual associations, you find this here. And it allows translators to see articles or whatever side by side, so helping the translation process. So in order to get this to work for our Hello World application, it does give a bit of guidance on this page. What you have to do, provide these three protected variables, these functions, and it really refers to these as examples. Kind of leaves it at this. Leaves it at that. Sorry. So let's look at it in a bit more detail. And what other things are, one or two other things that we do have to do. And one of the things we have to do is provide a couple of language strings, translation strings, and those are mentioned down somewhere near the bottom here. Those ones here. You'll certainly see those because these will come out here as the untranslated string format. If we look at then using this, we'll click on Goodbye World and we'll select also a target, something in Spanish. And if you have an association set up between this record here and a Spanish equivalent, it will automatically appear here, but we don't have an association set up, so we'll just select something. Okay, now if we look at this, I've got the Joomla debug console on, and you can see it in two places, so you can guess that what we've got here really is a couple of iframes. And if we look at the developer tools, and let's just put inspector on and put something like this area here, you can see here's the iframe here, and you can see its source. And if I just zoom in on that, you can see its source is hello world administrator index.php. Its option is com hello world, view hello world, and the task is hello world.edit. So really what this is expecting us to provide is that edit form that we came across whenever we're editing records. So that's the same form as we get whenever we click on one of our Hello World records. This is our edit form here. And this is really what is being displayed here and again here. So these are iframes with our edit functionality in. Now you'll notice that a couple of things. First of all, this being an iframe, it doesn't have these menu items up the top in. And when we were doing a modal, we found out how we could avoid getting those menu items in, and it was through the use of tmpl equals component. So one of the things that we need to do on our code for our layout, for our modal layout, if I can find it, that'll be fine. Is set tmpl equals component. So we basically go by if whenever it sets up this iframe. It will initially set TMPL equals component in there, and whenever we have our layout, we have to look at that and then set that up as a form again. Now the reason for that isn't that we have got these little filter fields, but rather that whenever we do a save reference, it will do a save and then redraw this. And if we don't have that TMPL equals component, it will redraw that and it will just show these menu items. So you can try changing this to take out this TMPL equals component and see what results. Similar to the when we had the forced language, we actually added the forced language as a field. Here we're adding this in the query. And again, you could add this as a field instead, but it fits better probably within a query. Probably one of the reasons I was thinking later is why you might want it as a field is if you wanted to access that in your JavaScript. It's much easier to access it if it's a field. So that's one of the things that we have to do to get it to work. And the other thing that we have to do is, you see here, it has changed our language selector, and if you look at associations, it's changed our modal fields there. So it's actually hidden ours and put in its own, and in putting in its own, it's used some of this chosen library function that is now built into Joomla. So it does mean that we need to have this here. So I've got, here is our edit.php, and this is the live file. It's not our code base. So what I'm just going to do is comment that line out and save it. And then go back into multilingual associations and refresh. And this is the sort of thing you see here. So if you get this instead of what you should get, it does mean that you've forgotten to include this chosen library. So I'll just save that back. Okay, but basically, apart from those little problems there, those issues, all of the functionality you need to provide is, as described here, goes into this file here. So if we look at our equivalent of that, here's our equivalent here. And what we're doing is providing basic information about our component. And the reason is so that COM associations can find some of this information by itself. So for example, if we do this Spanish, didn't save that, so it's not saved there, but select target. Here we have a modal, and as you can guess, it's another iframe. So if again we look at our tools and select something here, this up a bit. Here's our iframe here. And if we look at the source this time, this is using COM associations. So it's not using COM hello world to produce this iframe. It's using its own code. And what it's got in here, it has things like the title, the alias, associations, those sorts of things. But in particular, the title and the alias. So how did it know that that was the title and that was the alias? Where to find that information? Well, obviously it's here. We provide it with information to say that if you're looking for the title field, you'll find it in the greeting field in the database. And similarly, there's things about alias here. we're passing the name of the alias field, and that's really so that COM associations can find that information. It can do the appropriate joins with the appropriate tables to display our hello world data within its form. As well as that, it has another section on support. So for example, if your component uses ACL or checking in and checking out, you can set those sorts of variables. Although I did try and test it a bit, and it didn't seem to be totally working in the same way as I would expect the normal Joomla functionality to work. So maybe one or two bugs still in there. But the whole purpose is if you have got a component which is multilingual, and you want to provide the capability for administrators to do the translation in a way that's as easy as possible, this provides a good side-by-side view that allows translators to work on one, comparing it to the equivalent in the other language. Obviously, there are other extensions that you can buy, but this is something that comes shipped with Joomla. Okay, so that's that. The second thing I want to talk about was about the Hello World edit form. So if we go back to here, this is our edit form. Now, what I wanted to do was kind of look at the life cycle of the form, and as we go through the life cycle of the form, we'll pull in various of the changes that we've had to do here. So if we think about how our form starts, well, our form starts with our view and this line here. So this is the view for our edit, our Hello World view. And in it, it has got this line get form, which will go to our Hello World model and call a function get form. And within our Hello World model, the first thing we do is call load form. Now, we don't have a load form in our Hello World model, so it's obviously coming from whatever we inherit from, and we inherit from JModel admin, which is here. And if we do function load form, we'll find that it's not there. So it must be within function or the class that it inherits from JModel form, and I've got it over here. So if we again look for function load form, here it is. So this is the function that will be run when our model calls load form. So let's look a bit in more detail about the parameters in that. So we're passing as parameters get form. We're passing com hello world dot hello world and hello world and some array here. And if we look at our signature here, we've got the name of the form, which is the first thing, which really doesn't matter so much. It's kind of like a label for it. But the next thing is key, which is the source, because this tells the form where to find the structure of the form, which is defined in XML. So down here, we're trying to get this form, and it sets up various places where it tells it to look for it. And where we have it is in our models / forms. So we will use this form here. And then it calls form get instance, and it passes the source, which is in our case hello world, because that is the name of the file that we're going to be putting the XML into. and it calls JForm getInstance. So JForm is here, and one of its functions, I should say that JForm is changing to form. I mentioned in the last video a number of classes are changing their name. So the old form, the old name was JForm. The new name is form. And there's a function in it called getInstance. And you're passing the name of the form, the name of an XML file or string to load. And what we've passed is hello world. And so it will be looking for, in our models forms directory, hello world.xml. We're looking for that. So there's our form definition in XML. Okay, so that's the first thing it does. The next thing, it looks at one of the options, and one of the options is about loading data into the form. So we have said load data is equal to this variable, which we picked from here, which is going to be true. So we want the form to be preloaded with data. Well, why do we want that? Well, for example, if we're editing a form, we want the form to be preloaded with the data that's already in the database for that. Or if someone makes changes and then submits it, but there's an error, we want the form to be preloaded with the data that the user had entered, so that they can see what they need to correct. So in both those cases, we want the form to be pre-filled with data. So what it does here, we're back in our model class, this one here, form model. It calls this load form data, which is going to come back to our hello world. And somewhere we have got a load form data. So this is really going to be providing the data that is going to be pre-filling that form. And in one case, we're looking for previously entered data, which will be put in the session. And that's the case where the user or the admin has put in some data, submitted the form, but there's been an error. So we want to provide the data that he previously entered. But if that's empty, then we want to get any data from the database, and we just use getItem, which again we have to provide up at the top. And this is what we had before, and this is the new thing that we need to add here. So we go in and check that JLanguage Associations is enabled, and if it is, then we use this function to get those associations. And we saw that function in the previous video. So once we've got that data, the next thing it does is pre-process form. And that again will come down into our pre-process form here. And this is what we have written. Now the reason for this is whenever we want our hello world edit form, we want to display the associations and allow the user to select the associations. So we want to have these fields here. The trouble is we don't know how many of these fields to output, because it depends on how many content languages there are installed on the system, because we want to put out one form for each of the content languages, which is really different from the language of our original record here. So we need to add that bit manually, as it were, or dynamically would be a better way of putting it. And the way that we do it is in our pre-process form. So this is adding an extra bit into our form. So first of all, we check JLanguage Associations, it's enabled as before. We get all the content languages, And if there's more than one content language, then we start into this section here, which is setting up really a new bit of XML. So here we've got a line where it's creating a new simple XML element, and then it's adding children, adding attributes. And all of this is basically PHP. There's no Joomla involved here. So if you go to PHP page, you'll see about simple XML element. You'll see the various methods that can be called to set up children, attributes, and all that sort of stuff. It's all really PHP. But what you end up with is a structure in XML, and then you pass that to load. So I've actually drawn it out or written it out in this form, which is the form that I guess we're more used to. So this is the XML structure that represents or what is produced when it goes through here and sets it up dynamically. So you can see it's adding a form, then it's adding a fields element, which is name associations, and a field set element below the fields, which has got item associations. And there you can see there fields associations, field set, item associations, and then under there each of the fields. And the key thing is it's calling it modal hello world, which is our custom modal field that we, similar to what we developed in the previous step, but it's also putting in the language. So if we compare what we had previously in our modal step, here's our kind of XML definition of that, and you can see it's here. It's similar. It's type modal hello world, but it doesn't have the language here. Okay. And these names are really quite important, as we'll find later on. So if we go back to here, what it's doing here is it's calling a load function on the form. So let's have a look at that. We're back on our form API, and we go down here, and here's load. Method to load the form description from an XML string or object, and we're really passing the XML string. And false really means that we're not replacing anything. So we're not replacing anything in the current form. We're really creating this as an add-on to the current form, so that they're kind of an extension to it. So that's that. Then we go back to our form model. It's called pre-process form, and the next bit is bind. So what it's doing there is it's saying, go back here, bind, method to bind data to the form. So what we've got on our form at the moment, we've got the structure which it originally built from the XML file, which was our hello world.xml file. This one here. It's got the add-on structure that we developed there and added dynamically. Plus it's got the data. And this is the, sorry here, this is the step where it's actually adding the data into the form that needs to be pre-filling the form. And that's really it from that point of view. So really now our form, its structure is known. It's got XML elements defining the structure of it. It's got the data. So the next thing that really needs to be done is the form needs to be output. And that's where we have seen a number of times the use of render field and render field set. because those will actually generate the HTML. See the HTML that goes into our forms. So if we go back to our code here, and we'll go on down. Note, by the way, here is here's our modal field definition. This is where we're actually looking at that element of the language and inputting into the URL that forced language equals that, depending upon what the language is set to. And our file here extends JForm field. So if we look at our JForm field, or form field as it's now known, here is our property, which is element, and it's a protected property, so it's only accessible from classes which inherit from JForm field, but ours does, so that's okay. Or we could equally use get attribute. Use get attribute and pass the attribute name, which in our case is going to be language. So if we called get attribute on that, it would return the language, and we could equally put that language into our element here, into our URL. Okay, so we were talking about the outputting it. So whenever we're outputting the associations, here's what we use here: render, Joomla, edit, associations. So this is one of the standard layouts, and I've got that somewhere here. Here it is here. And we can see what it's doing. It's calling form and then render field set. And notice that it's calling that item associations. So that is why whenever we have our form that we add dynamically, the name of the field set has to be item associations if we're wanting to use this. Notice also it's adding a little bit of JavaScript in there, and what it does is here we've got Spanish, French and English. If we change our language here to be English, you get different fields here. You get New Zealand English. So that's being done by the JavaScript there, and the JavaScript has actually output that as well. So that covers much of the code here. The next thing on the form lifecycle, though, is whenever we click on this, the form will be output using those render functions. But the other thing we need to look at is whenever we press save. And whenever we press save, there'll be a post that goes up to the server. And we'll just have a look at that. And here is our associations data going up to the server. And you can see it's kind of like an associative array with the language tag pointing to the ID of the associated record. And when we look at processing that within our save, we're going back to our JModel admin. And if we go down somewhere here, here is our code for handling that save. And if we look at associations, somewhere down here, oh, missed it. here is the line where it's starting to do association. So it's looking for if this associations context, and the associations context is what we need to set in our model. So somewhere up the top, I hope it's in our model. Yes, here we are. We've set the associations context, which is com.hello-world.item, which is what gets input into this context field here. So our model, JModel admin code needs to know what should be put in there. It's also checking JLanguage associations is enabled as usual. And it's also looking for the data on associations. And if you remember when we were looking at form data, this data array gets filled in from the form data here. So basically JForm there gets put into $data as an array. And if you go down here, you're looking at associations equals that $data of associations, and it's going for each association as tag ID, and what it's expecting there is this is the language tag and this is the ID. So this is why it needs to be in this format for the save to work, and which also means that, go back to our pre-process, it needs to be in this sort of structure here, with the name here being the tag, and that will then give you that sort of structure in the post parameters, which is required by the save to work. So it kind of all ties in together at the end of the day. I think that's everything on the second aspect that I wanted to cover. The third thing is about propagating associations. Now, if we go here, I've got 4 records set up. I've got 4 content languages on this instance: New Zealand English, British English, Spanish and French, and all of those records are associated together. And what I'm going to do is create a new record, and I'm going to call it, let's say, B English. I'm going to give it a category, and I'm going to set it to English. And I'm going to go to associations, and I'm going to select AES, so one of those 4 records that was all associated together, and I'm going to save and close that and see what we get. Well, we get B English is associated with that AES, but notice also the AES now, it's associated only with English, so its previous associations with French and New Zealand English have been lost. So you can lose associations in that way. So if you want to try your hand at something, what you might like to do is to try, this is another Joomla instance. I've again got 4 records that are all associated together, and I've set them as German, English, Spanish and French, and I'm going to create a new one. I'm going to create it. Let's say it's going to be Deutsch choose, and I'm going to choose the Spanish one. Okay, but what comes up here is another button which will allow you to propagate the associations from this record here to these other associations here. And if I click on it, it fills them in. So whenever I save and close and look at those records again, We've got the new one here, which is associated to Spanish, and it's now associated to the other two as well. But in particular, the Spanish one hasn't lost its associations with the French and English. So you might want to try and develop that. In terms of what you'll need to do, you'll need to look at your modal field definition. So that's here. And you've got buttons here, select button, clear button. You'll need to put in a propagate button as well. And with that propagate button, you'll need to have an on click that runs a bit of JavaScript in that you will actually have to set. So I've set it somewhere, I'm not sure exactly where. Add script there. So this is the JavaScript that you will need to actually put in, which gets run whenever that on-click listener fires. In that JavaScript, you're going to need to do a call back to the server, an AJAX call back to the server to find what are the other associations which are in the database. So you need to initiate an AJAX call there, and then you need to write some server code which will handle that. Just be aware if you're setting up a task equals something like hello world dot or so ajax dot propagate or something like that. As it says here, you need to have a format of the name of your controller file needs to be something like this. So if your controller is say hello, or your task is hello world dot propagate, for example, and your format is JSON, you will need a file called hello world dot json dot php in your controllers. I'm not sure whether I've still, there it is there. I've called my task ajax dot propagate or something like that, so I need a file ajax dot json dot php having set the format equals JSON. In that file we need to get the associations, pass them back down, and then what you need to do is you need to fill in the other fields. So you have the button here, sorry it's over here. Okay, you have the propagate button here. Whenever it completes, you need to fill in the other fields. And if you remember in the modal, we had a way of passing back the data from the modal by calling this function here. In this case, we've got a number of modals, one for each of the fields, but we need to call the other functions. And if you get that working, you'll see something like what I was showing there. If you're stuck or you want to just look at the answer, you can go to this new feature here, which is something that was developed really as a part of a result of developing the step in the tutorial, and you can see how it's done. It's really talking about adding that propagate button, which propagates the associations to the other. And obviously you can look at the code and see what the answer is. So that's about it for this video, and in the last video I'll look at the front end side of things. Thanks for listening. Bye.